Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you all to our 65th Foundation Day celebration. And we're starting the function today with our AIIMS Silver Jubilee oration, and I'm very happy that Professor Behra has agreed to give this oration. We will also have our research awards, which we had planned in the early part of this year, but were not able to do so because of the pandemic. And despite the challenges that we've had with the ongoing pandemic, I think it's important that we continue to have our spirits high, and the Foundation Day celebration is all about that. So I would like to just take this opportunity to welcome you all, and we're having a virtual culture program also in the evening, so I hope you all enjoy that too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So welcome to the 65th Institute Founder Day celebration. I think on this day, Institute awards an oration to an eminent scientist from India or abroad for his outstanding contribution in the field of medical and related sciences, generally in the form of research. So I'm very happy to state that this year, as Professor Guleria said, Dr. Digambar Behra has been selected as an orator for AIIMS Silver Jubilee Oration. And it is my pleasant duty to introduce Dr. Behra to you. Born in 1953, Dr. Digambar Behra did his MBBS from SCB Medical College in Cuttack, Odisha, and then moved on to PGI Chandigarh in 78 to start his postgraduate degree. He later joined as a faculty in the Department of Pulmonary Medicine at PGI itself and continued there, becoming a full professor in the year 2000. He headed the department from 2014 onwards till his superannuation. Now he is reappointed as a senior professor since May 18 in the same department. He is also served in between as director of the famous LRS Institute of Tuberculosis and Respiratory Diseases at New Delhi from 2006 to 2012. He's also been Dean Research at the PGI Chandigarh. Dr. Behra has several awards to his credit. I think the most notable would be Padma Shri, which was awarded to him earlier this year. B.C. Roy Award was given in 2004, and then he's also recipient of Carol Stiblow Prize, which is supposed to be a very, very prestigious award in the field of tuberculosis and other lung diseases. He's a fellow of American College of Chest Physicians and is on the editorial board of several journals. I think overall he's a very well-known international expert and a very acclaimed respiratory physician. His publications are over 570. He has worked extensively on lung cancer, tuberculosis, and other respiratory diseases, and is the chairman of National Tuberculosis Elimination Program. He has published 9 books and authored a number of chapters related to pulmonary medicine. Dr. Behra will be joining us from Chandigarh via a video link. I think we can see him already, and will be delivering the oration. The title of his talk would be Issues of Chronic Respiratory Diseases in India and Solutions. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Behra.
Respected Director, Professor Randeep Guleria, Madam Professor Anita Saxena, Dean of All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, the other deans, sub-deans, faculty members, residents, other students and staff of All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. At the very outset, I congratulate you all on occasion of your 65th annual Founder Day function. And also, I am grateful and thankful to the AIIMS administration for selecting me for this Silver Jubilee Oration Award. So, ladies and gentlemen, what I'll do, I'll just, during the next few minutes, I'd like to speak to you about the chronic respiratory diseases in India, and I will give you a brief overview. So, what I'll try to tell you about some of the epidemiology, specifically with the indoor air pollution, the post-TB chronic respiratory diseases, the ILD burden, the lung transplant, lung cancer, and if time permits, some of the other chronic respiratory diseases, and then the possible solutions that we need to have in this country. You know, chronic respiratory diseases, they are a group of chronic diseases affecting the airways and the other structures of the lungs. You can see a number of diseases are included in this. This is as per the WHO, classification. So I'll just go some of the important chronic respiratory diseases. The important ones are the asthma and the COPD. As per the global burden of disease study estimates for 2016, the number of asthma cases in the world are around 339 million, and COPD about 2.52 million cases. And as regards the disability adjusted life years, or what we call the DALYs, asthma occupies the 28th position and COPD 8th position as regards DALYs is confirmed. So no government and no society can afford to ignore the rising burden of CRDs, as you can see, and more so in resource limited environments. This is about the global deaths in 2000. You see, out of the top 10 global causes of death, the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease occupied the 4th position, and then just 16 years after, now this position has changed to the 3rd position. And this is again leading causes of death by economic income groups that varies from country to country. I think the latest data of the prevalence and attributable health burden of CRDs from 90 to 2017 is available in the just recent publication in 2020, June 2020. As you can see, the total number of chronic respiratory diseases about 45 million cases, and this is an increase of around 40% when compared to 1990. If you see the exact number of deaths because of chronic respiratory disease is nearly, you can see 4 million cases. This is again an increase of around 18% when compared to 1990. Again, the CRDs are the 3rd leading cause of death after the cardiovascular and neoplasms. However, there are the highest among the both males and females in the high income regions and the lowest prevalence in the sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. The age-specific prevalence is highly variable, and the total disability adjusted life years that has increased by around 13%. However, the age standardized prevalence, death rates and DALYs rates that has been decreased to varying extent. When there are comparative deaths of all the chronic respiratory deaths, the death rates due to interstitial lung disease and sarcoidosis are more than the pneumoconiosis in all the super regions of the world. And then the deaths and DALYs, the mortality wise, the attributable to COPD and chronic respiratory diseases, there is variability. And you see the leading risk factors, I think that is possibly more important. While it is most, smoking is more common in men, in women, you see the household air pollution from the solid fuels, particularly in the South Asia and the Sub-Saharan African regions. And then the ambient particulate matter in Southeast Asia, East Asia and other Oceania countries, and in the Middle East and the North African countries. This is now coming to you, the asthma prevalence in children. You see, this is the IJAC study, international study of asthma and allergies in children. You see this one in India, there are 8 or 10 different places. This is highly variable between 3 to as high as nearly 18% in case of children. And then one of the very important studies from this country that was sponsored by Indian Council of Medical Research and undertaken by our department here at PGI. This is known as the INSEARCH study, or the Indian study on epidemiology of asthma, respiratory symptoms and chronic bronchitis. The 12 districts in different parts of India, and there the standardized validated questionnaire was used, and a total of nearly 1.7 lakh subjects were included with equal number of men and women, and from 12 urban and 11 rural settings. This is how is the different parts of the country were included in the study, and you can see what I found. The asthma prevalence, the overall prevalence of about 2.05%, and in the rural area it is much more common, about 2.28% and 1.6% in urban areas. And the highest numbers were reported from Calcutta, followed by Trivandrum and Bikaner, and then of course there are the Other at that time, we have estimated in 2010, there will be 17 million asthmatics in the country. And you see the some of the important risk factors will be as age increases and the number of smokers. And so also please look into the use of cooking with coal and wood and cooking with other fuels. That is another important risk factors for asthma. And as regards chronic bronchitis, again, overall 3.5%, more in case of rural and in the urban areas. And again, the highest numbers were reported from Trivandrum, and then followed by Bikaner, and then Kolkata urban areas. And at that time, we estimated that the national burden of chronic bronchitis will be around 15 million cases. Again, the important risk factors will be increased age, smoking, and then use of certain biomass fuels. See, this is the prevalence on COPD in India that I have told. That is the COPD was that much, and 59% of the COPD were never smokers, and various other risk factors were tobacco smoking, environmental tobacco smoke exposure, increasing age, male gender, poor socioeconomic status, and use of biomass fuel cooking, which was one of the important things. This again another study conducted by Ghoshal et al. From Calcutta. This is the Asia Pacific burden of respiratory disease study, and you see of the four important chronic respiratory diseases, COPD was seen in about 20% in the respiratory practice of respiratory physicians. About 25% will be asthma. Then allergic rhinitis in about another 20%. Rhinosinusitis is about 2% of cases. Then asthma, allergic rhinitis in about 25% of cases. So now I think coming to the India specific, that is the global burden of disease study, 1990 and 2016. You know, in 1990, the number of COPD cases was around 28 million. And in 2016, you see there is around 55 million of COPD cases. So the prevalence was 3.3% in 90. And then in 2016, it is about 4.2%. Similarly, asthma, about 40 million cases of asthma in 2016, with an overall prevalence of about 3%. This is the Delhi's due to chronic respiratory disease in India is about 4.5% of all the disability adjusted life years, and that increased to about 6.4%. And the total global deaths due to CRD in India that occurred, about 32% occurred in India, and the most of them were because of COPD followed by asthma. You see, when you divide into state-wise, you see the Jammu and Kashmir had the highest number of COPD prevalence. It is about 5,000 per 100,000 population, and followed by other states, and the lowest was reported from Nagaland. This is again, this is the percentage of total deaths due to chronic respiratory diseases, about 10.9% in both sexes, and then COPD about 8.7%, asthma 1.9%, interstitial lung disease about 0.28%, pneumoconiosis about 0.04%, and other chronic respiratory diseases about 0.09%. And this is the percent of total deaths again, all the CRDs and the COPD, and then to a lesser extent about other chronic respiratory diseases. This is about the distribution of COPD. I was telling in 90, you can see more of red in it is coming in 2016, that I have already told you. Same thing with asthma, that means there is a increase in COPD and asthma in various states. Then as regards the different risk factors in India, you see ambient air pollution in case of both males and females, also household air pollution, smoking, occupational risks, they have gradually increased over the years. Now this is again a small study we carried out about respiratory symptoms among farmers, because India is a farming country, and then you get various types of respiratory symptoms that occur to the tune of 38% of farmers. And then you see, for managing the chronic respiratory diseases, particularly COPD and asthma, the guidelines have been developed by the Indian Chest Society and the National College of Chest Physicians, both for asthma, COPD, also in case of interstitial lung disease. Now coming to the household air pollution, again you see India is one of the countries in the world that shows very highest number of deaths attributed to household air pollution. And again, the deaths attributed to ambient air pollution is again, India is one of the highest number of cases in the world. The outdoor air pollution and the issue, it has been very well described by Kamath from Bombay and the late Professor Pandey from All India Institute. And coming to indoor air pollution, I think these are the common sins. So we have got various information about respiratory symptoms, lung function, carboxyhemoglobin. So this is one of the studies that we carried out in late 80s. When you see, these are the females and males who are exposed to different types of cooking fuels. You see the levels of carboxyhemoglobin indicator of one pollution, and then the blood carboxyhemoglobin levels. You can see how they are increased both in males and the females and the male cooks. And again, the carboxy exposed to different cooking fuels. You can see the biomass has got the very highest number of carboxyhemoglobin. It is almost similar to that of in Indian smokers, different types of smokers. The values are as high as 15%. And as I showed you in the previous slide, the women exposed to different cooking fuels, particularly biomass fuel, they will have a very high level of, the carboxy. I am sorry, this median, it is actually standard error of the mean. It is not median. It is both the previous two slides. Please take that as standard error of the mean. Then again, we tried to study the respiratory symptoms and domestic cooking fuels in about more than nearly 4,000 women. As you can see, we tried to find out their exposure index, their age. You see, most of them are in their middle age, 30s and 40s. What we again found, the 13% of these are all non-smoking women who are exposed to different cooking fuels, different types of chronic bronchitis, asthma, cough, dyspnea. And then again, you see the highest number again was found those who are using chula in comparison to other types of cooking. Again, the ventilatory functions, as we find, the biomass fuel users, they had the post-vital values less than 75% of the polluted. So the lung function, particularly post-vital capacity, is affected. In case of children, again, we found the most symptomatic children were those whose households are used kerosene and the mixed fuels. So the mixed fuel and the kerosene fuel had worst effect on the respiratory system of children. Similarly, the passive smoking, domestic fuels and lung function in North Indian children, both FBC and FEV1 were the lowest in boys whose households used biomass fuel, and PFR and forced expiratory flow, they were lowest in boys with their homes using kerosene and fuels. Then again, the course of bronchial asthma is again severely affected those who are exposed to domestic cooking fuels, particularly in women. Then this is another study we tried to find out the risk of lung cancer and the biomass fuel. You can see the odds ratio was 5.33, both in the univariate and in the multivariate analysis. The biomass exposure in non-smoking women as a very important risk factor for lung cancer in Indian women. Same thing in case of tuberculosis also, we found out the domestic cooking fuel as an important risk factor. And again, it is not only our group, then I think many other groups have found out the impact of domestic air pollution. It is Rajkumar from BP Chest Institute, then various respiratory functions, allergies, lung functions. And again, this is the study by, you see the Sandeep Salvi from the Chest Foundation. And again, they found out the prevalence of COPD among the urban slum dwellers in Pune city. The same thing they found about the COPD, around 7.2%. It is the highest number. And then 56% of them were never smokers. And also in case of kerosene users versus LPG users, you can see the odds ratio is about 2.51. Then they did the bronchoscopy, the sputum induction studies they did. Again, they said the various changes when comparison to clean air, biomass smoke. And then again, the sputum inflammatory cells are again very high in case those who are exposed to the biomass fuel. The cellular and the mediators of the inflammatory response again are affected by those who are exposed to the biomass fuel. Again, this is very interesting study in the experimental mouse. You can see the biomass swell, they produce the DNA damage, both in the comet tail length, the DNA tail, and so on and so forth. So I think the domestic cooking fuel is an important risk factor for Indian women. And I think the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, the PMUY, is an important step forward of the government of India as far as empowering the poor women. But I think it has got very important risk reduction for domestic cooking fuel in case of women, particularly poor rural women. And nearly 10 crore people are now supplied with this clean fuel, what we call as the LPG. And these are very common scenes you see in the rural India, the stove burning. So these are very important issues for this country. And I think one of the important concepts that come now is the nature step to respiratory health. That is the Helsinki by Nature. This is a group of the GARD, the Global Alliance Against Respiratory Diseases. We had met in 2018 at Helsinki, and this is a position paper statement that is Helsinki by Nature. You see the microbial imbalance, long-term immune dysfunction, and low-grade inflammation. These are part of including the chronic respiratory diseases and other non-communicable diseases. So the various issues like not smoking, air pollution, animal contacts, outdoor activities, fresh fruits, soil connection, and all these, the rich and diverse microflora that increases the immune balance. And then, so that is one concept which is coming, that is nature step to respiratory health. Then what are the common gaps with the COPD and asthma in this country? There is a weaker absence of national technical leadership at the Ministries of Health for CRD programs, although we have got now a NCD program where the chronic respiratory disease, particularly COPD and asthma, are included. Then health care workers are not fully trained on use of protocols for management of respiratory diseases. There is lack of availability of the spirometers and peak expiratory flow meters to aid the diagnosis. The availability of essential medicines, particularly inhalers, are not available. Patients buy them from out of the pocket. Then non-adherence to the treatment guidelines. Then inadequate care, coordination in tertiary settings to address the multimorbid conditions of CRD patients. Then a lack of recall and reminders for patients. Then distance to care centers, particularly for those living in the rural and the rural areas. Then taboos about inhalers, the social misconceptions about inhalers, particularly marriageable ages, then the steroid habits and improper use, all these are issues. So it is very important to find how diagnostic services can be optimized, the role of primary healthcare teams, referrals and interactions of primary healthcare teams and specialists, then setting up essential services for CRDs at the primary healthcare levels, and then the various key indicators. And as a WHO collaborating center for research and capacity building in chronic respiratory diseases, our department here at PGI, we are engaged with the developing various modules for WHO, particularly for the Southeast Asia, the SEER pain, that is the package of essential NCD interventions. We have developed training modules, and then also currently we are updating that, the chronic respiratory disease module. So in the general principle will be prevention and control programs, and then we have to overcome the barriers which I have already told you, and that should be implemented at the patient care at the primary healthcare level. Now just few words about interstitial lung disease in India. There are various studies that are reported about ILDs. Initially it was when in the late 70s and 80s we were students. At that time we thought that interstitial lung disease and IPF was very uncommon. As you can see, the earlier reports, it was only 60, 70, 100 cases that have come up. But I think then we tried to develop our own registries. So this is about registry of 800 cases, where our most common was the sarcoidosis and then followed by IPF. And I think the ILD India registry, that was a prospective recruitment of adult patients in 27 centers in 19 Indian cities. And then what they found, they reported 1,000 patients, and they found that hypersensitivity pneumonitis is a very common one. And I'm sure that the All India Institute, the Department of The respiratory medicine is also having its own registry. So there are certain ILDs which are peculiar to India, that is the silicosis, co-workers pneumoconiosis, radiation, heart lung, Gujar lung, exposure to domestic cooking fuels, tropical pulmonary, and exposure to high altitude. So these are certain interstitial lung disease that is peculiar to India. So we should, if we keep searching, and we will keep finding interstitial lung diseases in this country. Now I think it is in the era of COVID, it is not proper not speaking about post-COVID pulmonary fibrosis and COVID-19. This is what is coming up, and many centers in the country as well as world over. So these things are coming. We do not know exactly what is the prevalence, what is the incidence, who are the people, but I think certain things which are known, if there is the disease duration, more is the longer, more the severe is the case, and more longer the patient is in ventilatory support. So they are the ones who will develop pulmonary fibrosis. I think we need to gather more data about these. These are the predictors: advanced age, severe the illness, length of ICU stay, and mechanical ventilation, smoking, chronic alcoholism. There is no proven effective targeted therapy, particularly antifibrotics, and some cases has gone on to lung transplant. Few cases you read from the newspapers, but actually, to be very frank, we don't know much about that. Now coming to the lung transplant program in this country, since these are the chronic diseases, you see, I think I will not forget Dr. Venugopal, who is the father of fast heart transplant in India, then Dr. Girinath, who did the fast heart transplant at Apollo Hospital, Chennai, and then Dr. Cherian, who did the fast heart and lung transplant in India. You know, although we know the many centers in South, they keep on doing the lung transplant, but the authentic data from the published data came from Apollo Hospital, Chennai, where they have done 101 lung and 62 heart transplants. Out of these, 21 are heart lung transplants, 25 double lung transplants, and 7 single lung transplants. And 73% of these lung transplants are still well, and 80% survival in the primary pulmonary hypertension, and 67% survival in ILD. They have not defined what is the survival. The global group of hospital doing frequent lung transplants, and the Kokilaben Dhirubhai Ambani group of hospitals in Bombay, they are also advertising, but again, we don't have their published data. This is one of the first cases that PGI did from the public sector. We did the first lung transplant. This is this advanced case of hypersensitivity pneumonia, and then this is after the lung transplant. But unfortunately, that patient could not survive longer. But again, and I think I saw this report that is AIIMS New Delhi offering the first lung transplant, and I'm sure with your leadership, Dr. Guleria himself being an eminent pulmonologist, and the department, I think you people also make progress. Now coming to about the tuberculosis, although tuberculosis, strictly speaking, is not classified as a chronic respiratory disease, but you know, it is because it has got a lot of sequelae. That is what I'm trying to say. Now it is named as the National TB Elimination Program, with the new logo coming about 2 days back. You see, we have got last year we reported about 24 lakhs cases of TB, and then there is a lot of progress as regards the incidents, the missing case reporting, and then the additional case reporting. But still, India harbors about 27% of the world burden of TB, and obviously because of this COVID, there is a setback about the case reporting. But you see, we have gone on with treating the MDR TB cases with Sutter MDR, with the bedaquiline containing regimen, delvenide containing regimen, and all oral regimen. These are the number of cases. And with the use of newer Sutter MDR TB regimen, our overall survival, which was about 48%, now has improved to about 60%. Similarly, in XTR TB cases, the overall earlier used to be 35-36%, that has improved to 66%. Right? So the dimension of TB control, it is not only clinical, it has both public health and social dimensions has been reported. But what actually we are interested today about the chronic respiratory disease following pulmonary TB. You know, the pulmonary TB, there are a number of respiratory system complications, while the bronchitis, tracheitis, lung injury, pneumothorax. But I think what more is the abnormal lung function, bronchostenosis, post-tubercular bronchiectasis, scar carcinoma, obstructive airway disease, aspergillomas, and then destroyed lung, fibrothorax, open negative syndrome, respiratory failure, cor pulmonale, and amyloidosis. These are some of the important complications. You see, this is some of the important studies that shows where pulmonary tuberculosis is implicated as a cause of developing COPD. There are many studies, very large studies only I'm quoting. In South Africa, you can see the airflow obstruction that has been reported. Then again, very high degree of COPD in case of TB. And many of these important studies from the world, that the BOLD study, Platinum study of chronic respiratory diseases, you see the TB has been an important contributor for development of chronic respiratory disease. And this is how both obstructive and restrictive complications occur following tuberculosis. This is some of our own studies. We can see the PFT pattern, the obstructive defect, restrictive defect, and then the mixed patterns. Then you see the 78% will have, even after cure, so-called cure of pulmonary TB, they will have persistent respiratory symptoms. 98% will have residual radiological sequelae, 40% having far advanced environment, and then 96% and about abnormal pulmonary function test of different types will be reported. Similarly, including the severe diffusion capacity will also be there, and then 6-minute walk test, and then there will be in these type of cases of pulmonary TB. Yes, this will be. You see, the bronchiectasis is another important. This is what we call as the EMBARK study that was done in India. You see, 35% of the bronchiectasis are because of tuberculosis or as a sequelae of the post-tubercular sequelae. Then I think another important entity which is coming up is the chronic CPA or chronic pulmonary aspergillosis. This is a chronic pulmonary aspergillosis. It is a chronic infection of the lung tissue which is caused by aspergillus that progressively destroys the lung and is commonly seen in immunocompetent individuals with a previous underlying pulmonary condition. You see, if you see the global burden, you consider the 10 million cases globally, and you see the 5-year prevalence rate of CPA, you see the India, then the China and the Indonesia, some of the developing nations where TB is more common. So CPA is commonly. Then this is from our own institute. The most of the cases of CPA past history of pulmonary tuberculosis. And again, it is expected that 85% of the underlying lung disease CPA, and then the remaining 10% non-tubercular lung. So it is estimated that case of pulmonary TB will be around 92,000. If you estimate of 7,000 cases per 100,000 cases. See this type of picture. You see the fungal ball. You see the type of X-ray cavities, five lungs. The patient is cured of pulmonary tuberculosis. One side lung totally collapsed. This is aspergilloma. Patient is already cured. So this is presents with massive impact. So the TB control program looks after only negativity, but the pulmonary TB not been taken care of. I think that time has come when we have to also the pulmonary large number in a large number. And remember, these patients are all exposed to common like smoking, biomass, poor nutrition, not mouth attention, and the symptoms may persist, and then there is a need for sequelae registry. Now the last another about lung cancer in this country very fast publication. I saw publication I see in 1978. But since then the things have changed. The Global says among the top 5 most frequent lung cancer in males, and then in both sexes, it is coming coming to the fourth common cause, and the top 5 cancer in terms of mortality, it is the second common cause, the second common case of males, and then the females, and third in case of and third in case of both. You see, another important increasing incidence of adenocarcinoma. This is what we are seeing. 15% were adenocarcinoma. So now between 86 onwards there is a trend, and then same thing which has come. We have our last report shows the adenocarcinoma 36%. This is a study from your own Anant has reported. This year, it is again about 34% are adenocarcinoma. And then the targetable mutations in India, you see in EGFR, various studies from TMC Mumbai, again the AIMS New Delhi study, and then our own study from PGI. So roughly 24 to 25% of cases are EGFR positive. So around 8 to 9% are ALK positive, and ROS1 positive around 2 to 3% of cases. Then the PDL1 testing, as you can see, more than 50% will be seen around 15 to 20% of cases. Why it is important? Because if there are 100 patients of lung cancer, if the 40% are adenocarcinoma, and with 22% of EGFR positive, 8% ALK positive, 2% the other rare mutation. So that means 32% of these 40 cases or 13 cases overall out of these 100 patients of lung cancer. That means roughly 15 cases will be treated with targeted therapy. They are not required to be given chemotherapy, toxic chemotherapy. If you add the PDL1 expression, because the immunotherapy which has come in a big way, so if you add to that, so then you see a significant number of cases of lung cancer either can be managed with targeted therapy or immunotherapy without going into toxic chemotherapy. However, are we ready to use these newer drugs? The cost, availability, then the financial help, generic drugs. So these are many issues. Just to give you an idea about the cost of these tyrosine kinase inhibitors and other drugs in India, you see gefitinib and erlotinib, they are very cheap drugs because they are the generic drugs. If you go to the other drugs like osimertinib, then the other drugs used for ALK positivity, you see the drugs are very, very costly. Although it is variable, the various pharma, they give the discounts, but they are very, very high. Again, if you go to the immunotherapy in a non-small cell lung cancer, they are in the tune of crores, 1 crore, 12 lakh, 50,000 per year. All the types of, they are fortunately available, but they are very, very costly. So many of our patients cannot afford that. So this is our journey of chemotherapeutic agents for lung cancer over the last 40 years. In 70s, 80s, hardly the survival rate was weeks, then it went on to 2 months, right? But now with these newer drugs with EGFR or the tyrosine kinase inhibitors, you see the overall survival now are in years. Now we are telling 2 years plus. Similarly, with the ALK patients who are treated for ALK, you see the 1 year, 2 year survival. 1 year survival is 57%, 3 year survival is around 12%. So these are the things have changed. Even this is just a recent publication, New England Journal of Medicine, that shows how the availability of these tyrosine kinase inhibitors, both in men and women, the 5-year survival has increased from 26% in 2001. In 2013 onwards, now it is reaching 35% in men and 44% in women. However, as I told you, these costs are this treatment of cancer is very costly. So there are various government schemes like Ayushman Bharat, Prime Minister National Relief Fund, Ministry of Health Family Welfare gives Rashtriya Arogya Nidhi, then central government health schemes and others. So some help can be obtained from that. Then I think the last slide about the pneumoconiosis, you see we have got many issues of silicosis and then the pneumoconiosis, but unfortunately part is we don't got any registry, and these workers are, they are informal and unregulated sectors. Then the obstructive sleep apnea in India, again the ENOSA guideline that says that 2.4 to 4.96% in men and 1 to 2% in women, they are having OSA. So ladies and gentlemen, I end here and I will express my sincere thanks and gratitude to my departmental colleagues at PGI Chandigarh, led Professor Mali, Professor Jindal, Asutosh, Ritesh, Navneet, Sajal, Ketty, Indarpal, Valiappan, and all my senior residents, DM students, and PhD students over the years. And this all these work was not possible without their help and contribution. So, namaste.